Welcome to this mini devlog for Static Mag, a platformer FPS about stealing weapons instead of reloading. Recently I've been fixing bugs and broken features in preparation for a public playtest, which isn't quite ready yet, so don't get too excited about it. But one thing that I've recently fixed was the tick enemy, which is a small spider robot that tries to blow up the player. Maybe the idea sounds familiar? I don't know.
What's up, bitch?
However, they can be pulled or picked up and thrown like a grenade to blow up enemies. Over the last couple of months, I've done a lot of refactoring and made sure to keep the normal enemies up to date, but the tick got left behind so they no longer worked properly. They were also a pretty weak enemy that would walk slowly towards the player and came to a complete stop before exploding, which made them easy to dodge. So while fixing all the null ref exceptions that were spewing out from them, I figured I'd give them a bit of a buff as well. I decided to make them faster and jump towards the player before exploding to make them more deadly and force the player to engage with them. This required a couple new animations for running and jumping, which weren't too hard to animate. One trick I learned for animating spider-like rigs is to keyframe all the legs at once, add a cycles modifier so the motion repeats, and then offset each leg's keyframes. It's a lot easier than trying to animate each leg independently and ensures each leg travels the same distance. For the jump animation, I came up with this based on some reference material I found on jumping spiders. The way ticks jump is by first creating a starting horizontal velocity, then calculating the corresponding vertical velocity necessary to reach the jump target position. In the code, I start by creating the horizontal velocity that points to the player with an initial speed of 18. Then I calculate the time it takes for the tick to jump by dividing the horizontal distance by the horizontal speed, which is used in the next if statement and returns out of the method if the time until explosion is greater than the jump time. This just ensures that the tick times its jump with the countdown timer so that it explodes at the jump's apex. When past the if statement, I do one last distance check to see if it makes sense to jump, since it's a bit awkward for them to jump if they're already close to the player. So if the tick is far enough away to jump, I then calculate the necessary vertical speed by rewriting this kinematic equation to solve for initial velocity, which then gets clamped to a maximum of 8 to prevent them from jumping as high as they need to reach the player. Once that was working, I decided to give them some more polish as well. So now while the tick is being pulled or thrown, they blend into an in-air animation, which makes them look a lot less stiff, and also reminds me of playing as Melman from the hit 2005 video game Madagascar. Also, whenever the player is holding a tick, they now play a struggle animation instead of being completely static. Mag. I also gave them some proper hitboxes and I attached a couple modular components to them, which came about in my last code refactor. I've been liking breaking scripts into small components as it makes it easier for objects to share functionality without the drawbacks of inheritance, which is basically like crack for programmers. The first is the hitbox component, which relays the incoming damage to the enemy class that's on the root of the game object. Every enemy has a component called enemy, because I'm good at naming things, but contains basic info each enemy needs, like their health or if they're alerted to the player. The hitbox component also has a damage multiplier field, which allows for scaling the incoming damage. This is useful, for example, if you want headshots to do more damage or you want leg shots to do less. The other component to add was for the hit effects. This is another simple component that takes a reference to an effects object pool and spawns an impact whenever the hitbox is shot. One last thing the tick needed was for it to orient itself better when walking on slopes, which is why I have this big ass ramp here. I kept things simple and wrote a script that would rotate the transform of the tick's model to align its y-axis with the surface's normal. It works by raycasting down to the ground to get the normal of the surface, so I can calculate the amount of rotation needed by taking the angle between the normal and the world up direction. But since this asshole is three-dimensional, I also need to know what axis to rotate on. I get this by taking the cross product of the up vector and the surface's normal vector, which gives us a vector going into the screen, which represents the rotation axis. But since this vector is in world space and I want to set the transform's local rotation, the rotation axis needs to be converted into local space before creating the rotation using angle axis. Setting the local rotation just ensures that we are combining the model's rotation with its parent's rotation that the navmesh agent component is controlling, which seems to work well. Before this video ends, I did want to quickly mention that I made a community Discord server for anyone who wants to hang out, show off their own projects, or ask game development questions. I'll also be posting some more updates and announcements on the game there, as well as shitposting some memes. So if you want to join, I'll have the invite link in the description, and I'll see you in the next video.